Welcome back, csc200, to part 2 of our ex9 PHP table exercise. And we set up some HTML in our first video. And let me close this up because I have my SQL running. I don't need to look at it right now, so I'll just collapse my terminal and I could just focus on this. I might even be able to move this over a little bit and shorten that and have some more space here. So this was our HTML, and remember our PHP code that ends in a question mark is wrapped around by the table, by the body, by the HTML at the end. So it's kind of embedded inside our table tag because that's what we're going to display our information in. First of all, we have a query here, and this is what we did from the last exercise. So this is just an SQL query inside quotes, but we're just going to say select code, name, continent. I'm also going to put population. I'll put population, and it has to be spelled right. It's a capital P. So we're going to have four things: code, name, continent, population, from country, and we're going to say where continent, and remember country is our table, and we're going to say where continent equals, and we're going to do Oceania. We're not going to do North America, we'll do Oceania, so you can learn a little bit about geography here, and that's actually like Australia, New Zealand, and things like that. So remember, this is in single quotes because our whole query is in double quotes. Now we do have a semicolon, but that's because our PHP always needs to end in a semicolon. So unlike Python, we need to terminate our code with semicolons here, and if we don't do that, sometimes we'll have problems, so we got to be careful about that. Now, one thing we'll have here too, and we could do this just to help us out. Now, before we dig into this part, we have this if. Remember, this part of our PHP says if connection, and it means the opposite. So if connection, this means if the connection doesn't work, it's going to say die connection failed. Well, I'd like to have something that says that it actually works, that shows you're connected. So you could switch these around, or you could just put an else statement. So I'm going to do else, and I'll put this after it. You could put it up on the same line if you want, and I'll make sure I put that back there. And I could put else right here, and it needs its own set of curly braces, so I'll put them in there. And this means, so if it does connect, we could basically say echo. Remember, for PHP, we have to say echo, and I could say connected. And if it's a string, if we're just putting text on a page, we have to say connected, and I'm going to say to, then I'm going to put a space. I could actually put a colon space, and if I want to have the database name, like world, just to give me some input, I could connect this with a concatenating character, which is a dot in PHP. Sometimes you can use a plus in JavaScript, and even in Python you could use a plus, but we're going to use a period here, and then we'll just put DB name, and just to make sure I don't mess it up. And if I had punctuation at the end, I'd have to put another concatenating dot and just put like a quote and put a period. So if I just wanted a period after there, I can do that. So connected to, and it'll say world, and then it'll have a period at the end. So that means if it connects, we should get a little message up there. And I think the one I showed before had that at the top. So I'm going to put that there. So I'm just adjusting that. Now remember, if has its own little set of curly braces, opening goes to the right, closing goes to the left, and then else has its own set. Now you could put else on its own line, and I'll move this back. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but sometimes you'll see else on the same line as the closing of the if. So it has its own little set of braces. It's basically saying if it does connect, then do this, and it's going to echo that. So we'll make sure that works okay. So we have that little if else that we corrected. We have our query here, which remember, it's this column, this column, this column, and this column. We have 4 columns, and then we're saying from the country table, and then it's going to be where continent, which is another column, is equal to Oceania. So that's what we're going to display here, and we're going to display all the countries on the continent Oceania. Now what we're going to do down here is we're going to break this up a little bit, and I'm just going to hit some returns here. And I'm going to say code. Actually, I'm going to get rid of this code right now and just say row, and then I'll get rid of this, and I'll put row in another line, and we're not putting any spaces, and I'll put that on a line. And notice what I'm doing here. These are the concatenating dots that I just talked about, and I'll put another one here. I'll make sure I have the dot, and I am putting just, you don't have to have the space, but I just think it looks better like that. And this does not need a dot here. That's why that's going to be at the end. But I am going to do another row, so I'll just copy this, put row population. So that'll match up, our table will match up to what we have up here, code, name, continent population. That's what we have there. So that's what we're going to display in a table. But this is not a table yet. This would just display in one line, and we even took the line break out. So what we're going to have to do here is put one line, and we're going to put a TR tag. Now HTML inside PHP has to be like a string. So we have to put quotes, and I'm going to put a TR tag, and that's my opening TR, and then at the end I could put a closing TR. So it's going to make a table row, and I'll put a closing TR here. So this is all going to make one row, and it's just like before. It's going to keep going through making rows of a table until there's none left. So what we have is a starting tag and a closing tag of a row. But if you remember from our video that we just watched, we're going to have a cell tag. So we're going to have 4 cells here. So we're going to put TD tags. So I'll do this. I'll copy this because I already have this in here. And I'm going to make this a TD. And then at the end, I'm going to have a closing TD. So it's going to be after this dot here, it's going to be connected. So I am going to put this here. And then I am going to put another dot at the end so it keeps connecting. So I do have to concatenate this with that. And actually, I need this. I need another dot here. So it should be like that. And I have a TD, and I think I need a dot here too, unless I have them together, but I need a dot. So whenever we're concatenating, even though these are 2 strings, I'm still going to have to concatenate them because they're set in separate quotes. I could put them all together, but I'm going to leave them like that. So there's the row, and here's my cell, and there's that, and then I'm putting that at the end. So this is going to set up like this. So I could even copy this, and I'll just put it after each one, and there'll still be a dot before the closing TR. So that's okay. So everything looks okay. Now remember, these have to have closing slashes. They're not a closing tag unless they have a closing slash. So I need that. Just like this one down here has the closing slash, these need closing slashes. So this is identifying the row. The row is pulling in the result, so it's going to keep generating rows until it's done. So this semicolon is at the end of that. So I think we're okay with this so far. And we might just want to check out what it looks like. It's not going to look like anything great right now because we're going to have to format the table to look nice. And we're going to be using CSS to do that. But at this point, I might want to just see what happens here and just see what it looks like to see if I get any errors, anything like that. Now, you may see errors in your code if you have something typed wrong, but this, I think it's right. And again, I'm not trying not to look at my other one, but we have our breaks, we have our HTML tags in quotes, and then we have our dot in between. So there's a dot, and then there's a TD, then there's a dot, and there's a row, and there's a dot, and closing TD, and then a dot, and the next row. Now, obviously, I don't have these, so I have to fix this and make sure I have it like this, and like that, and like that, because each cell needs its opening and closing TD. So that's, I think, what it should look like. I think that looks okay so far, and I'm going to save it. If I haven't saved it recently, I'll save it. And then we'll take a look and see what it looks like. So I'm going to go back here, and I did have this open. If you didn't have this open, if this page was closed for whatever reason, you'd have to go back here to project and go to running URL, and then just open it up again, and there it is, and then go into Goorm PHP and go to the end here, and then just type in ex9, because that should go to your index page inside your ex9 folder. Let's see if that works. And it says this page isn't working. Let's see why. I forgot to put a semicolon here. So let me make sure I put a semicolon here, and I'll save it again. Try to refresh this. And that's it. I do have an issue up here with these TRs, but it looks like the issue was I didn't have a semicolon here. Now I also have a thing about a bunch of TRs. Oh, here we go. Here's an error. So I forgot my little tag there. So let's fix that, and we'll go back. And that should fix this weird thing going on up there. That looks okay. So it's actually fixed. So I had some errors here. I was missing a bracket here, and I was missing a semicolon there, and it just wrecked my whole page. You have to be very careful with stuff. If you just miss a semicolon there, it has a problem. So it ran into a problem there. It wasn't doing anything else. But everything else looks okay now. So that's working in a table. So this is our table. And what we're going to do is format it real nicely. And you can tell we're in a table because it's aligned here and it's aligned here. So what we're going to do is we're going to format it nicely using CSS. And we're going to put our CSS in here. And we're just going to, and this is just HTML stuff. If you're not familiar with CSS, you could check out W3 School's CSS tutorial. We're going to format some tables in here. So we're going to have to target tags. So we're going to target like the table rows and table tags and things like that. to adjust the spacing, to adjust the font, and things like that. So we're going to do that in part 3. So we got this working, had a little glitch there. Again, don't forget the semicolon, and don't forget any of your little tags here because they will create problems. So make sure you look at that, make sure everything looks okay, and we'll move on to part 3.